Will the record U.S. debt sink the economy? Oh no! Oh no! Oh, it's scary out there. The answer is no, it won't. Other things will sink the economy, but it's not the record debt. So let me just show you. So we go to 2020. This is in the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. A snapshot of the record high U.S. household debt. 14.15 trillion in 2020. Then we go to Start Page, or what is this called? Yeah, startpage.com, because I don't use Google and I don't use DuckDuckGo anymore. They can both kiss my big fat behind. And we type in total U.S. household debt, and we're going to come across some things here. Right here, consumer debt totals 15.56 trillion, a record-breaking increase, says CNBC. Hold on a second. And household debt jumped by 1 trillion, the most since 2007. The biggest annual increase since 2007, the amount of household debt. Americans have never been in so much debt. The economy can't survive. Oh my goodness, we're going to die in a ball of fire because of global warming. Global warming. Pablo. Oh, I miss you, Bob. Miss you, boys. Oh, global warming and debt's going to sink us all. In case you're wondering, I'm being facetious. I'm being a jokester. All right, so let's read some of this here that I got here for you. All right, so we're going to look at right here. There's a total U.S. debt balance. All right, so we're going to go back to 2004, and we had what do we have total? We about 8.25 trillion in debt in 2004. All right, 8.25 trillion. So we're going to take our trusty calculator, put 8.25 as our present value. Now we got 15 something, 15.5. Present value, zero payment. We got 2004 to 2021. That's going to be 18 years. And we're going to compute our interest. So we've averaged 3.5% a year of increasing debt year over year. Oh my gosh. Now look. Oh, whoa. Housing debt. 9.9, we'll just say 10 trillion in 2008. Housing debt. 11.25 trillion in 2021. Interesting, is it not? So housing debt has gone all up by 10% in literally 13 years. That ain't too shabby. What's the big one right there is credit card debt. Not credit card debt, student loan debt. That's the big one right there. All right, then we go over here. Mortgage service to debt payment as a percentage of disposable personal income. So I'm sorry, mortgage debt service as a percent of disposable personal income. Here we are in 2007, 2008. And here we are right here. Half. We're 50% less in terms of mortgage service payment than we were in 2008. 50% less. So while our amount of mortgage debt has increased by 10%, that's it. The actual debt payment relative to our disposable personal income is way down, gone down by 50%. Now we can argue what disposable personal income is. I do take some issue with the Fed, how they calculate that, but be it as it may. I get it. Anytime you're dealing with these numbers, they're using the broad economy, and they got it. And look, I give them credit, man. They're saying, look, we have a certain amount of personal consumption, and thus that has to be met with income, or else we're taking on debt to get that. So we're going to assume if your personal consumption is 100 and your income is 90, you're taking on debt to 10 to equal the consumption. So we're going to say your income is 90, and even though you're consuming $100 worth, that means you're adding $10 of debt. Or we got personal consumption of 100. And our income is 110. That means our income is $10 in the surplus we're adding to our total savings. It's tough to do that because you're talking about the whole economy of 330 million people, unique Americans. But it is what it is, man. I mean, this is what we got. Now, your individual economy will be different than the entirety of the 330 million other people in the United States. Just keep that in mind. But anyway, so that's pretty positive. And if we go back here, we'll say, okay, well, the reason for this is simply because income has gone up, and the debt service amount has gone down because of paying off debt and lower interest rates. It's just that simple. Now, if we want to look at the total debt here, household debt service as a percentage of disposable personal income, we see here this has gone down as well. Look at that. So here we were in 2008, and here we are now. So we're down from 4 divided by 13. We're down by, let's see, it was at 13.1. Now it's at 9.2. So 4 divided by 13, we're down by 30%. So actually, we have the average American household. I think this is the average. Frankly, it doesn't matter. But the average American household has a whole lot more ability to service the debt than they did in the past, even right here. And we've never seen it this low, by the way. I mean, this goes back to 1980. We've never seen household debt payments to personal income this low. That's not bearish in the least. And if you go to mortgage debt, it's never been this low, not even close. Let's take a look. I think. Hold on a second, I can't remember. Yeah, never been this low. I won't say I'm close, but right here in 1980, 4.3%, and now it's at 3.8. So again, never been this low before ever. All right, hold on a second. Now we know we went back to, what did we say, 2004, I think. Yeah, we had 2004 Q1, about $8.5 million of debt. Now we're going to go to the Federal Reserve Board of New York. We're going to go back to 2004, right there, 2004. We had, that's Q, right there, about 10 million total liabilities. This includes, I think, also assets, I think, nonprofit organizations as well. So I don't really want to, but anyway, we're going to use it. So nonprofit organizations, about $2 million. But anyway, just to give it a gauge. So here's Q1 2004. We had 10 million, which is about 2 million nonprofits. The other one just had households. Anyway, so we're going to look at 10 trillion in 2004 of liabilities, and we're going to go here of 18 trillion in 2021 of liabilities. So 18, remember just a second, this will make sense. 18.4 liabilities of 2004 to 20, that's 18 years, and zero. That means liabilities have grown by 3.44% for everybody, for total. Liabilities have grown by 3.44%. But if we look at assets, let's see, Q4 2001, right there, assets were 63.8 trillion, and now assets are 169 trillion. So 63.8, 169. Assets have grown by 5.56. So assets have grown for every $3 of debt, assets of $3.3 of increasing debt, assets have grown by 5.5, and that's compounding over 18 years. So I know that doesn't seem like a big deal. As each year expands, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, the difference between debts and assets. I mean, look at this, man. So our debts has stayed the same. It's so small you can't even see it. Look at that. It hasn't literally stayed the same, but it hasn't moved nearly to the extent of the same scale as assets have. It's just nuts, the idea that it's going to shrink. So even if we had a 50% decline, 50% decline in the asset base, which includes households, houses, and your investment assets, even we'd still be at 170. What's 170 divided by 2? That 85, right? 170 divided by 2. Yeah, we still have at 85. So even if we had a 50% decline in assets, we'd be at 85 assets over 18 trillion of debt. We'd still have a net worth minus 18 of $67 trillion. In 2004, we had a net worth of 43 trillion. We'd still have a net worth 50% above where we were in 2004, even if assets declined by 50%. Isn't that crazy? I love this stuff. It's nuts. So the idea that all of a sudden that the economy is going to implode because this record debt level is just stupid. You have to look at it as a percentages, not in the totalities. This is what drives me crazy. Oh, yes, we are at record debt. We are. That doesn't mean freaking squat. If our assets are 5,000 million billion times more, it means nothing. Don't look at it as in terms of dollars. You look at it as percentages, our total net worth. Now, the reason why it's not going to sink the economy, and look, we're probably in a recession right now. Don't get me wrong. Recessions happen all the time. It could be long, but it's not because the amount of debt is going to sink the economy. It's just not. It's a balance sheet recession, as I talked about on last night's live stream. And for you who are interested in this stuff, and I know most of you aren't, unfortunately, The Holy Grail of Macroeconomics by my man Richard Koo. #1 book to get for Christmas or Easter, because you'll completely change your thinking on this stuff. All right, so let's go back. So Just because we're at record debt, okay. Well, I mean, our debt service is we can service a debt much higher. We have assets that are much higher. This doesn't mean that we're going to be freaking bankrupt. All right, part two of this, let's go to the velocity. And this is what I always tell people, look at this, man. There's the velocity of money. I mean, here we were in 1996. Money turned over 2.2. So I'm not exactly sure. Right here, 1996, 2.2. Here we are in 2022, 1.1. There's a 50% decrease in the velocity of money. What is happening here is after 2008, I'm just telling you, man, people said, because here's 2008, by the way. People said, I'm paying off debt. And you can see it right here. I'm paying off debt. I don't care what the interest rates are. I am paying off debt. I'm paying off debt. And you can just see this time and again, right? Well, I mean, look, mortgage debt's only gone up by 10% over the last 17 years. It's nuts. Nuts. It's just housing. There's a percentage of income to housing. That's crazy. Then we can go to here. Where's the other one I want to look at? Right here. I mean, if we look at debt as a ratio of disposable income, wow, I mean, look at that. It's just the disposable income right there is the dropping. The ratio of debt to disposable income is dropping like a brick in water because people are paying off their debt, which is why the velocity of money is so low, which is why we're not going to have huge inflation for an extended period of time. We're going to go into a Japan-ish economy. Low unemployment, low inflation, low growth, recessionary, 100%. Now, I could be wrong, absolutely. But that doesn't mean you sell stocks. Jill just sent me an article from Gary Schilling, like, sell stocks, a recession's coming. That's just freaking idiotic, man. Not that Gary Schilling has ever been right. Recessions aren't stock selling. Stupid, man. You don't say, oh my goodness, recession's coming, selling stocks. Anyway, I want to show you something else here. As long as money isn't turning over, the low velocity of money, there isn't going to be hyperinflation. It's just not going to happen. Relative to the monetary policy that everyone's like, oh my goodness, the Fed needs to do something. I'm telling you, man, this is it's bad when we think the Fed has more control than it has. It just doesn't have any. So stop worrying about that. Don't worry about the amount of debt we have. Oh my goodness, we're all going to die. It's just freaking stupid. Don't. So the debt isn't a problem. The amount of money relative to service a debt isn't a problem, for sure. People are paying down debt as opposed to accumulating more debt, which means the velocity of money is dropping through the floor there, which is not inflationary. All right. On top of that, demographics aren't inflationary either. All this is recessionary for sure. All right, so then what happens, people say, well, we have all this debt we got to pay back. Well, we are paying it back. The problem is we're not growing the economy very much because we're paying back the debt. And we have an example of that from what happened in Japan. So let me show you. What happened here? At the beginning of the chapter, it was mentioned that Germany suffered a 5-year recession from 2000 to 2005. Its worst slump since World War II. When one looks at the German economy from a balance sheet recession perspective, one notices that until quite recently, German companies were paying down debt despite historically low interest rates. Exactly, 100%. German and Japanese companies began deleveraging because a sharp fall in asset prices that followed the bubble's collapse badly damaged their balance sheets. We haven't had a sharp fall in asset prices yet. We haven't. What has happened to Japan? Well, what happened was what we're doing right now in the United States is that we're increasing interest rates. We're removing liquidity. Even though there isn't much velocity of money now, we're removing liquidity. So the companies that are using the cheap money and easily access money, they're going to be hurting, man. And those companies are going to be hurting. And there are going to be some big asset bubbles that are going to pop for those companies. They're like, we can't afford to make ends meet. We're going to have to start selling assets. And that's what happened in Japan in 1997. In Japan in 1997, they said, whoa, the economy just tanked, and they really haven't recovered. So let me just read you again from Richard Koo. Again, if you're on my live stream last night, you'll recognize what I'm reading here. For the past 20 years, however, the economics profession has been dominated by the view that monetary policy is all-powerful. The factors that led to this state of affairs will be discussed later, but for now, it suffices to say that these academics, the notion that monetary policy was powerless to save Japan was simply unacceptable. Again, monetary policy. The Fed needs to do something to kill inflation. The Fed didn't get us into inflation, so the Fed can't rescue us from inflation. The Fed can only hurt it by actually taking away liquidity, because there are firms that need that liquidity. And when they can't get the liquidity and cheap money, they're going to have to go to other sources for their operations. And the other sources are going to have to sell stuff. And that's going to have this spiraling effect that is going to create a change in the economy. It's not going to break the economy because of debt, but it's certainly going to cause recessions, and probably long-term recessions. An asset bubble pops. Next thing you know, I already told you we're down 50%. We're still well ahead of where we were, 100%. This is why you pay down debts right now. All right. Starting around 1999, the IMF and other economists urged the Bank of Japan to implement a policy of quantitative easing, arguing that the economy would recover only if the bank substantially increased the supply of money, even though interest rates were already at zero. Yep. The Bank of Japan argued vigorously that such measures would be meaningless because they already had low money, or cheap money, and low interest rates. Isn't that crazy? So right here, incidentally, it's the same IMF that forced Japan on the brink of economic collapse by 1997 by urging fiscal consolidation. There was in effect a huge gap between the Japanese economy as IMF economists imagine it and the reality. When a team of IMF representatives visited me in 1996 telling me that we need to pursue consolidation, exactly what our Fed is doing now. Increasing interest rates and pulling back cash. They're buying back they're taking the cash out of the economy. All right, so they're giving back the asset. They're selling their assets that they have. They're selling the bonds to the banks. In return, they're taking out cash that could be used for liquidity purposes, which already isn't in this market anyway. It's not in the economy. All right. Because of the let's see, when a team of IMF representatives visited me in 1996, I told them that in no uncertain terms should they enjoin the Japanese government to pursue fiscal consolidation, because if they did and the government listened, the Japanese economy would almost certainly collapse. And even though the IMF team listened and took notes, they went ahead and recommended the Japanese government proceed with consolidation, and the rest is history. So it's not the debt that's going to cause a recession, because the debt is actually quite manageable, right? Especially if you're on a fixed rate mortgage or you have no debt. The problem is going to be the consolidation, the increasing interest rates, the pulling back of cash from the banks that are sloshing around anyway. Now, all that money is yet to find its way into the economy, which is why the GDP is so low. But there are firms that are going to get hurt by that, and that is going to cause a problem. But it's not the debt that is causing the issue. It's not even the monetary policy. The monetary policy didn't get us here. Is insane regulations on energy. But with that said, the monetary policy can hurt, especially in these day and ages when they're going to increase interest rates on the firms that need low and cheap money. And when those firms can't get that low and cheap money, look out below. That's my concern. My concern certainly is the amount of debt. That's just silly, because the assets are way through the roof relative to debt. The ability to pay for these debts are way through the roof relative to where it's been before. We're in pretty good fiscal financial shape, except for the idiots in Washington, D.C. and New York. All right. Love your thoughts. We'll see you